Well, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is dead. She died last night. She was an icon, and I like the word for her because she, in fact, was. She was a pioneer in a lot of ways in the legal field and in the fight for women's rights. And she fought. She was a fighter. She was a scrapper. She fought the good fight. She lived up to her philosophy and her ideals. She fought this cancer till she couldn't fight anymore, and it took her out. And she really wanted to stay in play uh, until the next president, whether it was Trump or someone else, was elected. That was what she wanted. Uh, but what she wants and what the facts are really irrelevant. I mean, the President of the United States has the sole right to fill a vacancy or to nominate a person to fill a vacancy on the Supreme Court. And if the Senate feels like it, because they don't have to, if they feel like it, they can put that person through the paces and approve them for the seat. And that's exactly, and it doesn't matter how many days are left, till the election. That is what the constitutional rights of both entities are, and he has a right to do that. That's balanced between the legislative and the executive branch, and that's what they get to do. Anything else is pure power play, and that's what's going on now with the Democrats. And I think that they have already lost their minds and are getting ready to really lose their minds. A brilliant strategy is that the president has said he's going to appoint a woman, so that eliminates that whole Me Too silliness that I know people are out there trying to do for all the men who might be nominated. Uh, the one lady who happens to be a devout Catholic, they're going to try to come up and say she's a religious zealot, and we don't need that kind of person on the court. I remember when President John Kennedy was running for president, the people went the folks against him went crazy, saying that he's going to take direction from the Pope and all kinds of stupid stuff, and that never happened. And his religion never came into his running of the country, and I don't think hers will either. I'm not worried about that because of uh, people are terrified that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. That's not going to happen. That the marriage rights are going to be overturned. That's not going to happen either. That's like saying that. Oh, by the way, if you don't know, the segregation of the federal government, including the military, was not done by law. It was done by executive order by President Truman. He signed a paper and said, we're no longer going to have segregated military, and told his people, go make it happen. That was an executive order. So any president that came after him could have said, well, screw that. I don't like black folks being with white folks in the military. That messes with unit cohesion and all that other silliness. And could have done a directive order and rescinded it. Fortunately, fortunately, between then and now, there are actually laws that will prevent that. Civil rights laws prevent that kind of racial discrimination in the federal government and the military. So there are now laws that make that executive order no longer an issue. But let's talk about what's getting ready to happen. The Democrats will, they're already talking about Nancy Pelosi anyway, an impeachment of the president. Uh, why is this such an issue? Because the balance on the court balance only assumes that that the justices only vote their political party. That is just not true. They do vote their interpretation of the Constitution. They do that. But there have been many times where the decision by the Supreme Court is unanimous. So if people are worried that they're going to vote uh, only based on who appointed them, then they haven't been paying attention since the court has been there. But this is all, it is about power, and it is about this particular president going on record to be only the second president in the history of the country, 233 years, to be able to appoint 3 justices in his first term. That's a big deal. And people just don't want this president to have anything as a legacy. And the fact that he's able to appoint this person is another issue. That it's about power. It's about power that will affect things for the next 50 years. My concern, and the only thing I care about, is the Second Amendment, the issues on the Second Amendment. By appointing one of the people, one of the ladies he's considering, that finally puts judges on the court that will look at the Second Amendment as not an orphan amendment. Now, what does that mean for the country? Well, that means the states, every state, it could mean a national concealed carry, reciprocity, just like a driver's license. It will certainly mean that all the anti-gun laws, all of them that are currently in place, will be struck down. And the reason for that is that the Second Amendment would be required by every state to use strict scrutiny, right? And so every law will be struck down. Why is that such an issue in states like California and New York? Well, look at the people who are going out into the street and rioting. There is a puppet master. And when it's just like back in the day, the gangs of New York in Tammany Hall, and Sullivan, who was the biggest crook and gangster of them all back then in New York City. The issue was the gangs were there to intimidate voters to get them to vote the way the power brokers wanted them to. And then the citizens said we'd had enough and started shooting the gangs. The gangs went to Tammany Hall to Sullivan and said, hey, look, we're trying to do what you want, but the citizens are shooting us. So he went and created what is called the Sullivan Act, which is still in place, by the way, that said the only people that can get a gun are ones that have a permit. Guess who got the permits? It wasn't the citizens. It was the gangsters, the bad guys, right? And that is the crux of it. When you arm the citizens, the bad guys can no longer intimidate them and intimidate people into taking a particular position. That's what's at stake. You will have these anarchists and Antifa people, those guys that are going and burning stuff and hurting people, getting shot, and there'll be more of their blood in the street, and that is the issue, because this isn't a black-white thing. This isn't a racial thing. This is pure political power thing, and the only weapon that the extreme liberals have are anarchists and rioters, right? And they want to see more of that. And I expect to see more of that, because they're going to be mad, even if Trump loses the election, which I don't care one way or the other. I just want this particular Supreme Court seat filled, and filled now, not so they could argue about, mail in versus not mail in. I don't care about that. I want them to argue about my Second Amendment rights and your Second Amendment rights. That's what's so important, because the ability, finally, for American citizens to be armed the way it was intended will fundamentally change the behavior of certain people in the country. I would not want to be a gangbanger. I would not want to be a gangbanger. I would not want to be some tatted up anarchist just out of prison running around because somebody's paying them to wreak havoc in the street. I wouldn't want to be that person. I wouldn't want to be that person. The prosecutors who are trying to threaten the Second Amendment people for defending ourselves, and then saying we're the bad guy. It will say to police departments in cities that have this type, the cops go and say, well, we can't handle the crowd, but we can go and arrest the person that the crowd is mad at, even though that person is a victim. We'll arrest them, and that'll make the crowd go away. That's what's starting to happen. But when the people can get together and defend themselves against that kind of stuff, that's the meaning of this. That's the meaning of this seat on the Supreme Court, and that's why it needs to be filled and filled now. So, as always, thanks for watching. Carry on.